Ok ragazzi, è arrivato il momento. Scusate se ho ritardato un po' di giorni nel vedere questo video, lo so, è stato imperdonabile attendere un po' di giorni rispetto a vedere il video di una nostra carissima, adorata fonte che è Laura FRYER. La adoriamo qui da queste parti, sul mio canale, e quindi sì, voglio assolutamente vedere il prossimo suo video, eccolo qui, bello pronto, con sottotitoli automatici e con traduzione, eccola qua. Pronti. Allora, il suo nuovo video si chiama, pensate un po', Saving Bungie, quindi immagino che stia parlando di Bungie e del fatto che le cose sembra che non stiano andando proprio benissimo con Marathon. Prasivo, grazie mille della sub con Prime. E quindi il video è di 17 minuti, quindi è un po' più lunghetto quello di l'ultimo di Laura FRYER, quindi temo, anzi, spero che abbia molte cose da dire, molto utile. Sì, lo so, grande Laura, sì, tanto love, noi la adoriamo da queste parti. Quindi, ragazzi, stop alla musica di sottofondo, pronti? Saving Bungie di Laura FRYER. L'hype train nel momento proprio perfetto dell'inizio del video. Fabio, grazie mille della sub, grazie mille dell'hype train, ragazzi. Partiamo.
You ever wonder what happened to these people?
Bungie has been mired in controversy for the past several years. They've had tone-deaf layoffs, they've lost several key team members, and they've been caught multiple times stealing artwork. To top it off, their latest game, Marathon, isn't loved by gamers, and it's likely to fail if it continues on the current trajectory. Things aren't looking good, and I wonder if Bungie can be saved. Can they lead their team out of this crisis? The short answer is yes, they can save the studio. That doesn't mean it will happen, but with transparency and accountability, they can build back the trust that they've lost. For context, if you haven't heard, the game developer Bungie, famous for making Halo and Destiny, was recently caught stealing artwork. Here's what they had to say.
It came to our attention that an artist who worked on Marathon in the early stages of pre-production took a number of graphic elements from a graphic designer without permission or acknowledgement and placed them on a decal sheet that was then checked in 2020. The decal sheet included icons and text elements. These elements ended up in our alpha build, and there's absolutely no excuse for this oversight, and we are working on and 100% committed to our review process to ensure instances like this don't happen again on Marathon or at Bungie.
This was a good first step for fixing things. Joe, the art director, did a great job.
L'ho sempre trovato poco convincente,
It's
però
very
ok.
difficult to be the public face of a disaster like this.
Questo è sicuramente
And he
vero.
didn't mince words. He apologized, he said
Ovviamente
they'd fix it,
un qualcosa, ragazzi, che è effettivamente difficile. Cioè, ogni volta che una compagnia si trova in una tempesta di merda, per usare parole che userebbe Oxford, è difficile venirne fuori nella maniera migliore possibile, e hanno risposto in maniera abbastanza corporate, e ci starebbe anche se non fosse il fatto che è l'ennesima volta che succede questa cosa dentro Bungie e io neanche me lo ricordavo. È tipo la quarta volta che succede, che abbiano fregato qualcosa a qualche artista, e a sto giro hanno proprio preso proprio tanto l'immaginario del gioco da tutto questo, mi pare di capire, quindi già.
said he'd make it right for the artist. I applaud Bungie for owning the mistake. This is the way they can start to rebuild trust. As long as they follow through and compensate the artists and fix their process, this will be a win for them long term. Every studio faces this problem with assets. It's not a new problem. And if you have hundreds of people working on the game, you have to be better than average at tracking where every
Luke,
single
grazie
thing
mille delle
is
5 sub in
and
regalo,
making
poi
sure
ti
you
ringrazio
document
meglio,
it.
finito il video.
You see, if Bungie's successful, they're going to be shipping this game 5 years from now. And the people who knew where the art assets came from will either have forgotten or they will no longer be in the company. Bungie has consistently struggled with process, so I wasn't surprised to see the issue. I saw it firsthand when I interviewed with them in the spring of 2004. They were working on Halo 2, and Jason Jones tracked me down one day in the cafeteria and said that I should come and work as their executive producer. He seemed very concerned, but I didn't realize how behind they were until I interviewed. I ended up talking to about 20 people over the course of a couple days, and Halo 2 was a train wreck from a production perspective. It was clear.
Ah, un po' di contesto, ragazzi. Laura Fryer lavorava a Microsoft in quel periodo là, quando Bungie faceva Halo, no? Faceva Halo. Ecco, quindi diciamo che Laura Fryer è sempre molto interessante sentirla parlare di qualunque cosa, ma in questo caso specifico Laura Fryer è una di quelle che conosce Bungie perché ci ha lavorato insieme in passato, diciamo così. Ora è passato tanto tempo, è vero, ma sta appunto citando alcune cose che sono successe nel passato che sono curiosamente simili a quello che sta capitando ora. Già.
They were facing an epic crunch if they were going to finish the game for holiday.
Designers are here, programmers are here, environment artists seem like they haven't gone home since about April anyway, so I think
They needed two things: production support to finish the game,
Ora sta
and
raccontando quello che è
adjustments in
successo
their culture so they
con lo
wouldn't
sviluppo
repeat
di
the
Halo
same
2.
mistakes in the future. I was excited to help, but it didn't happen. Bungie's process of interviewing was so broken that they
Grazie
never actually could
dell'acquisto sullo
decide
shop.
or get back to me on a decision in a timely manner. During that period, I was also speaking with Xbox Publishing. Phil Spencer managed both of the teams, and he told me I should go work with Epic on Gears of War. So I did.
Ok. E si passa
Bungie is
a
taking
Gears
the
of
first
War.
step in fixing trust with gamers, but now they need to fix it internally with their team and Sony. This isn't the first time art has been stolen. They've had this problem for multiple years. So why will it be different this time? Someone needs to be asking hard questions when mistakes that should have been fixed are apparently still being repeated. I've had to fix teams before, and here's where I would start. I would find a trusted person on the team that's competent and gets things done, someone who's production-minded, and then I would ask them to go figure out why this has happened. I would put them in charge of not only fixing the actual current problem of reviewing all the assets, I would also have them fix the longer-term issue. I would stay involved
Perché
because
c'è un
trust has been
problema di lungo
broken, and
termine
it's
qui.
not the first time. This is what I call trust but verify. If you've invested $1 billion into a company, or if you happen to be a leader at Bungie who spent your lifetime building this legacy, you can't just check out when things get bad. You need to make sure that the team members that you've assigned things to are able to get what they need to fix the problems. I'd also invite a person from Sony's team to help verify the findings. There needs to be full transparency. According to this article from February of 2024, Bungie is already in a strained relationship with Sony.
E l'abbiamo
Given
sentito.
this, if I were Sony, I would have already picked a trusted person and embedded them with the Bungie team in 2024. It
Axon,
would
grazie mille
create
della
a
sub con Prime.
communication channel for the team to express the things that they're seeing that would be outside their normal chain of leadership. If leadership's part of the problem, then Sony needs to know that, and they need to know how to fix it. And having this person that they can communicate with will help stop leaks. I found that one of the big reasons you get leaks on a team is when people feel like they have no other option because otherwise things aren't going to get fixed. Sony leaders should also be having skip levels with the Bungie team. This means talking to everyone reporting to the CEO and everyone reporting to the next two levels. I'd also add in all of the key individual contributors. In my experience, competent programmers, designers, and artists will tell you what isn't working. They want the game to be great, and they are willing to tell you what isn't happening and how to fix it. This takes time, but you need to get this information from the team. Remember, everyone in the studio knows what is and isn't working. The data is all there. Gathering all those issues, prioritizing them, and fixing them is the only way the Bungie studio will survive. Everything that's brilliant and broken in Marathon was a decision made by someone, an action taken by someone. Most game companies will have a database or they'll have some type of documentation where debates over features were covered, and you can find out who the people are who understand what Marathon needs to be, and you can put them in charge of making the game better. Imagine how things might have been different for Redfall if Xbox leaders had taken time to talk to the team directly, if they had understood how desperately broken the game was. Of course, you want to look at the more objective data
Vi ricordate
as
di
well.
Redfall?
You can tell who the competent
Lì c'è da
team
dire che
members are by
Microsoft
looking at what they've
purtroppo
contributed to the game build.
è entrata
You
in
can look
ballo
at
solo
player
dopo un
metrics
po',
from the recent alpha.
diciamo, post
You can review
acquisizione.
what the internet thinks about the game. What are gamers saying and why? All of this will start the process of understanding what is working at Bungie and what isn't. And if it's really bad, you can take this approach.
Can we review our status here, Si? Let's look at this thing from a standpoint of status.
Oh, la citazione da Apollo 13.
What have we got on the spacecraft that's good?
I'll get back to you, Gene.
Trying to ship when the studio
Bellissima
is
sta
on fire
citazione.
isn't easy. It's like driving down the
Bellissimo
highway
film,
at 55
quello
and trying to
oltretutto.
change a flat tire. You have to be very careful. At the same time, you can't ignore the fire. You need to start chipping away at problems. But you don't want the situation that I call pirates on a burning ship. This is where the ship is on fire and you've got the entire team on deck and they're not putting the fire out, they're sword fighting. It's very easy for a team to descend into this kind of behavior, so any changes you make need to be approached with that in mind. Finger pointing is going to happen, and leaders should watch carefully to see who these pirates are. They may be right. They may be right in what's broken, but you have to look and see how many of them are actually trying to fix the problems and how many are fanning the flames of Bungie's destruction. Assuming Sony wants to keep Bungie alive, they probably need to delay Marathon. Then they have to show the team that they know what the problems are and they have to fix them. This transparency doesn't come without risk. It could lead to more leaks, but I don't think they have a choice. They've already lost a lot of competent people. They can't afford to lose more. This is why I suggest finding those team members that are good and put them in charge of fixing things. Competent team members already know the process and the people. The more autonomy Sony can give them, the faster they will start to rebuild trust and momentum. And momentum is critical. Even when you're working on a game that isn't in trouble, you still need to make sure you've got momentum. Bungie's momentum right now is negative. They are so unhappy, morale is so low that they're leaking to the internet. And you've got to turn that around as quickly as possible, because the good people still in the studio are likely already interviewing elsewhere. One way to fix momentum is to establish a plan with mini milestones for finishing the game. It sounds simple because it is, but it requires analysis and hard work. The team needs to create these mini milestones, things that they can definitely hit. And then when they do hit them, they need to celebrate it. And this will start to create those beats, that momentum in a positive direction. It will get everyone focused on making Marathon great. And the team needs to set these milestones because the people doing the work need to define the work. This approach might be happening. There have been reports that Marathon will move to a strategy of releasing multiple playtests.
Ok, sì, che mi sembra la cosa migliore. Io non sto dicendo niente, ragazzi, perché sta dicendo tutto lei. Non c'è niente che mi viene da aggiungere.
Then leadership can deal with the personnel problems. They can start managing the poor performers out, and the team can focus on the game. I've used this approach with games and studios before. Early in my producer career, I was handed several games that were on fire, and my job was to figure out if they could be saved. It wasn't fun. I didn't like seeing teams fail. It's heartbreaking because it's usually good people doing their best, and it's hard to stay objective. I wanted every team to be successful, but it turns out sometimes they just can't make the game. There was one game in particular, codenamed Dragon. It was being developed in the late 90s by a company called Eclipse and was featured in the Next Gen magazine. I started by playing the game, looking at all of the assets, the bugs, the design docs. I reviewed everything we had. I also started talking with the team, and I started with the Microsoft publishing team. You see, we were still learning how to make games. We were still figuring out how to partner with other game teams. We weren't perfect, and sometimes we were making the mistakes.
Parecchio tempo fa,
if I could find those mistakes and fix them on our side, that started the process of building trust with the developer. It made them happy to see that I was willing to actually fix problems on my side as much as I was willing to dive into their issues. For fixing the game itself, I asked them to make some mini milestones where we could assess progress and get some wins. The developer was continually late on builds, and most of what they delivered wasn't high quality. These milestones were really tiny. For example, please deliver one animation on one character at final quality. Take one section of one environment and make it at final quality. My hope was that this would inspire the team and create momentum for the game. Sadly, it didn't. Everything they delivered wasn't great, and it became apparent very quickly that they didn't have the talent to make this game. I remember sitting
Ecco, questa è un'altra cosa importante. Purtroppo, sapete, quando arriva una comunicazione su un team o cose del genere, quando ne sentiamo parlare, diciamo, sulla pubblica piazza, sentite sempre tutti dire «Ah, ma quel team di persone meravigliose, talentuose e incredibili che realizzano queste bellissime cose». No? Ok. Però purtroppo non è sempre così. Anche statisticamente parlando, alcune persone sono molto brave a lavorare, altre molto meno. E ci sono degli studi che molto semplicemente non sono proprio in grado di sviluppare certe cose, non importa quanti soldi butti su di loro. Non so se mi spiego. E questo è esattamente l'esempio che ha fatto Laura FRYER adesso. Ed è una cosa che penso tutti sappiano. Però nel mondo dei videogiochi per qualche ragione non si dice quasi mai, no? Cioè, alcuni team fanno cagare. C'è poco da fare. Purtroppo è così. E nel lavoro di tutti i giorni di chiunque si vede sta cosa, no? Giusto?
down with their leader over beers and trying to have this discussion with him, it's very difficult to tell someone that their game isn't doing well. But I did it. I sat down and as respectfully as possible, I told him I didn't think they were going to make it with their current talent and on their current trajectory. To my surprise, he agreed completely. I appreciated his honesty. It took courage to do that. When they delivered their next milestone, they failed to hit their goals again. I called a program review with Microsoft Games leadership. I laid out my case, and I suggested that we cancel the game. It would take too much to save it. I had run down all the data. I knew I was right, but the leader told me that we couldn't cancel it. It was baffling to me, and I argued about it after the meeting too. I'm not sure why he was so stubborn. It's possible that he was friends with the founder of the company, who I believe at that point had just joined Microsoft, or maybe there was something else there. But either way, it was very strange for me to see an ex-programmer acting emotionally instead of refuting data. So I went home and I told my husband that I didn't see any other way to fix the game except to parachute in. I was going to have to move on site, in bed with the team, and see what I could do. I didn't want to do it. I doubted that it would work, but I really didn't see any other option. In the end, I didn't end up going because Microsoft decided not to pay for the latest milestone since it failed. That was effectively canceling the game because if the developer can't make payroll, they can't continue working. So the game got canceled and
in un altro modo praticamente.
Because this team cared about their game. It wasn't that they didn't want to make a great game or that they weren't focused on what players wanted. It's that they couldn't do it. And it's really sad to see people fail. So the approach I'm suggesting would start fixing Bungie, but they have to want to fix the problems, and it's possible there are barriers to doing so. Maybe Sony made a deal where they aren't allowed to embed people on site. Maybe there are performance guarantees where leaders on the team are incentivized to act against the best interests of saving the team or the game. For example, maybe Marathon has a set ship date, and if it's missed, executives won't get their big payout. I've always admired Sony. They've done a lot of great things, but lately they've made some silly mistakes, so I can believe their contract isn't great with Bungie.
Ecco appunto.
I mean, look at Concord. If you looked at that game and said, yes, this is great, we should totally buy this studio, even without the game looking as ridiculous as it ended up, it's risky to buy a studio that hasn't shipped and has no track record for success. It was too early to tell if the team was good. Sure, there were individuals on the team that had a proven track record, but not as a team. And games like these, it's about the team and the system. It's not about a few people's pedigree.
They understood the value of respect, that if they treated their developers and players well, those same developers and players would forgive them when things didn't go as planned. But above all, they cared about their game.
Having trust with the gamers, the developers,
discorso di
and
Sven Lee che sta venendo
is
citato in
critical.
continuazione.
It's critical to the survival of the studio, so they have to start running at these problems and fixing them as quickly as possible. Because this trust that you build is what allows you to make mistakes. It's heartbreaking for me to see this team struggling because it could be different. It could be so much better. I remember when Bungie came to Microsoft, the passion they had was incredible. They were some of the most fun and competent people I have ever worked with in the games industry. Now, obviously, most of those people are gone. I suppose it's kind of the ship of Theseus at this point. But that doesn't mean that they can't turn this around and survive. There are many problems, and the odds are stacked against them. But I think that if they have the will, if they really want to fix it, they have a great chance. And I, for one, hope they do.
Yeah, well, software production is much more of an art than a science. At the time we were at Macworld, our box was in production, and we were actually planning to ship the product in 2 weeks. We certainly had no interest in lying to our customers and getting people annoyed at us, which was actually the end result. People getting annoyed at us, not us lying to them. But as I said, software being an art and not a science, it's very hard to predict when things will get finished.
Già. Allora, come sempre ragazzi, i video di Laura Fryer sono fantastici proprio per quella che dico sempre essere la sua migliore caratteristica, cioè la rivoluzionaria normalità di questa donna, che dopo la lunga esperienza nell'industria videoludica proprio come produttrice esecutiva è esattamente il tipo di persona che è nel ruolo di dover prendere queste decisioni, e quindi quando fa un video parlando, cioè questa è praticamente un punto di vista professionale, non è semplicemente un'altra persona che dice la sua. Quindi è un qualcosa che oltretutto lei conosce bene Bungie da tanto tempo. È molto interessante il punto di vista perché, se ci fate caso, sono tutte cose che filano perfettamente, ma per qualche ragione sono ogni volta veramente difficili e non ti spieghi come mai vadano incredibilmente storte, però è questa la realtà, no? A me le due cose che hanno interessato più di questo video sono state, tanto per cominciare, il paragone coi pirati sulla nave in fiamme, no? Che quando le cose vanno veramente male, la nave è in fiamme, se ne vanno tutti sullo scafo e cominciano a litigare tra di loro invece di tentare di risolvere il problema, che è un po' quello che sta succedendo secondo me nell'ultimo periodo, e ok. La seconda è il fatto che, in base alla sua esperienza, ci sono dei team che semplicemente non sono più capaci, o non sono proprio capaci a fare determinate cose. Lei ha fatto l'esempio di un altro studio con cui lei ha lavorato nello specifico, no? Quando era in Microsoft, e molto semplicemente lo studio non aveva le capacità per realizzare certe cose, non importa quanti soldi gli buttavi contro. Perciò è effettivamente una cosa difficile da dire e difficile da ammettere, però sapete che c'è, in certi casi bisogna capire se è veramente questa la situazione, e non è assolutamente detto che sia il caso di Bungie, magari riusciranno a variare la cosa, però ve lo dico, sono pessimista, perché con tutto quello che è successo nell'ultimo periodo, con tutto quello che si è sentito, io non so come andrà a finire. Io quello che prevedo è che Marathon verrà rinviato, secondo me, almeno di un po', anche se recentemente Sony ha confermato la finestra di lancio, anche se mi sembra veramente strano, perché tutto lascia pensare a un fallimento e sta trapelando praticamente ovunque, che anche internamente pensano tutti che sarà un fallimento, e poi vedranno di rimettere a posto un po' di cose, però non so bene cosa possa essere fatto a questo punto. Da tutto quello che è trapelato ci vorrebbe un cambiamento molto più profondo. Magari ha ragione lei, che ha detto magari l'accordo con Sony di indipendenza, vi ricordate, no? E Bungie è stata acquisita da Sony, ma mantenendo l'indipendenza della gestione delle cose e pubblicando anche su altre piattaforme, no? Magari è legato però a delle performance. E se queste performance non vengono raggiunte, a un certo punto credo che Sony comincerà a calare la mannaia e o a, non dico chiudere il team, non penso che succederà, ma penso che comincerà a cacciare un po' di gente o a metterci i suoi uomini, no? E cominciare a gestire lei le cose, come se fosse un PlayStation Studio al 100% tipo Insomniac, per capirci, ok? Quindi secondo me questo è un po' quello che succederà e niente, vabbè, sentire parlare l'ora FRYER è sempre una cosa spettacolare.